What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing part 6 where I use some of the best Pokemon from each region that for whatever reason nobody else is using. Now some of you may have already noticed, but this is the Alolan Pokedex emblem, which is actually Generation 7. This is part 6, so why have I skipped an entire region? Well, I used up basically all of my rare candies in yesterday's video featuring Frostmoth, so I actually couldn't build one of the Pokemon from Kalos that I think is probably the best Pokemon from that region that nobody else is using, so hopefully when the Great League returns next week, I'll be able to make that video. But anyways, on to this video. I'm running an ABB style team with a double rock backline, which is quite risky given all the Mud Slappers and Water types in the meta these days, but it'll make a lot more sense when you see the safe swap is Midday Lycanroc, which has incredible coverage with Sucker Punch, Trailblaze, and Drill Run. Now what this does mean is that it sucks at doing rock type things, but that's actually fine. Its job is literally just to bait out the hardest answers to my sweeper Pokemon, which is Alolan Geodude. Geodude has access to Rock Slide and Rock Tomb, which I think are way better charge moves than the rock type charge moves that both Graveler and Golem have, so I do actually think it outperforms both of them in the current meta. Now for the lead Pokemon, and probably the most underwhelming Pokemon on this team, I'm running Dhelmise. Now for the strategy to work, I needed something in the lead that would basically just force trainers to bring in their Mud Slapper, if they had one, to counter my safe swap, so a grass type felt like the obvious choice, but there are quite a few grass types from this region that recently got buffed and are starting to see more usage. So basically, Dhelmise felt like it was the only option. It wasn't a bad Pokemon per se, and it definitely was required for the strategy to work. So anyways, with that being said, let's get into the question of the day. Which region as a whole do you think has the most underrated Pokemon for the Go Battle League? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Dhelmise into Talonflame. Of course, not a great matchup. Gonna be safe swapping into Lycanroc, and straight away able to bait out a Gastrodon, and now I'm going straight for Trailblaze here. Do they know about the grass type coverage? They absolutely do not. It gets the one shot. We flip switch advantage, and not only that, they come in with a Shadow Dusclops. I've boosted up my Sucker Punch damage. Drill Run gets the one shot. The opponent saving both shields for their Talonflame, but that's just not going to work out for them. We've got one of the hardest answers in the form of Alolan Geodude. I'm going to no shield. It's a Flame Charge. It doesn't do much damage, and so the opponent just concedes the match. So there you have it. Lycanroc actually wouldn't do that well into Talonflame, but the opponents, they just don't know that. But anyways, into next battle. Unfortunately, kind of an awkward matchup here. I'm taking super effective damage from the Shadow Claws. I recognize I'm going to win CMP, so I'm going to go for the Power Whip here. Power Whip is going to be shielded by the opponent, and they will fire off a charge with just a Hydro Cannon there. Now I'm going to swap straight away into Lycanroc. Unfortunately, they will outpace me to that next charge attack, but that's okay. We still got two shields. Going to use one of them. They now come in with the Dene, but Lycanroc has perfect coverage here. I'm going straight for Drill Run. Drill Run, not respected. Gets the one shot once again. They come back in with Feraligatr, and Lycanroc not done yet. We reach another Trailblaze. Trailblaze grabs the final shield, and since they didn't come in with a Mud Slapper, I feel like Geodude probably has some play in the backline. We get the Volt Switch farm down. They come in with a Shadow Cradily, but that's fine. They're actually on Acid, which is resisted by the rock typing. I go straight for Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb does big damage there. The opponent farming up to back-to-back charge moves, but we're already at a second charge move here. We go for Rock Slide. Rock Slide gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to opponent into next battle. We're going to see Shadow Sizzle in the lead. Now, this is definitely a tricky Pokemon for me to deal with here. Of course, they are going to completely wall my charge moves, but the opponent might not know that. Shadow Sizzle also a very glassy Pokemon, so I do grab a shield with the Wrap Bait there, which is quite nice for me, and that is also going to debuff their defense. We come in with the Geodude. I realize one Volt Switch won't quite get the KO here. They're one away from back-to-back Trailblazers, so I swap Ice Snipe with the Lycanroc, but a single Bullet Punch did huge damage there. Now they come in with a Azumarill, not too bad for me, especially if they have a second water type Pokemon in the back, which is typically the case with a Shadow Sizzle in the lead. I'm able to deal big damage there. At this point, I will just let it go down. We come in, but unfortunately, no, that is not the case. They've actually got Cradily as their final Pokemon, and even worse for me, they are running Bullet Seed this time around. So Bullet Seeds hitting for super effective damage. They're probably going to bait with a Rock Tomb, but it doesn't really matter too much. Rock Tomb debuffs my attack stat. I go for a Rock Slide here, hoping this will get the KO. It doesn't really matter at this point. Rock Slide actually doesn't quite do enough damage there. And at this point, I'm just going to no shield. There's no way we can win this game. So unfortunately, Cradily takes me out there. and we do end up losing. But GG's to our trainer into next battle. Gonna see Altaria in the lead. So once again, not a great lead matchup for the Dhelmise, and that is kind of the story of this team. Dhelmise just didn't really win any leads, even when it did. Like, it was up against like a Feraligatr, which is still a bad matchup anyways because of the Shadow Claw damage. But anyways, whilst I'm talking about that, we are able to take out the Shadow Kanto Marowak there, which is huge for me. We flip switch advantage. I don't need to shield here. Likely Sky Attack and Flamethrower both are resisted. Sky Attack is double resisted. Hardly does any damage. And their final Pokemon going to be a Charger Bug. Now, I might as well go straight for a Rock Tomb here. Rock Tomb, of course, going to permanently debuff their attack stat, as they do have no other Pokemon remaining. So, of course, I'm now going to shield this. The opponent fires off a Discharge for some reason. Quite strange there. Maybe they're running Crunch as coverage here. I don't really know. Either way, we go for another Rock Tomb. We win CMP. At this point, I don't need to shield this. The opponent goes for Discharge once again, so surely they're on Crunch, which means Crunch is going to hit for super effective, but I can still no shield. The double debuff. They actually go for X-Scissor, so honestly, don't really understand that play with the Discharge at all, but either way, doesn't really make a difference. We can go for the farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top on there into the next battle. You can see Dhelmise into Araquanid. So again, not a great matchup for me. Going to be safe swapping into Lycanroc, and your opponent is going to swap out, and they're going to swap into your Novan Stunfisk. So of course, we do still have coverage here. Trailblaze does decent damage, but they can sponge it fairly comfortably. So I'm actually going to use a shield here, as I can grab a shield back from the opponent. Now, fighting for switch advantage isn't that amazing for me because I kind of still need a shield for my Geodude because they are going to have Water Pulse full coverage on the Araquanid. So at this point, we let the move go through. We come in with the Dhelmise. Dhelmise just barely not able to go for a full farm down here before they do reach a departing Mud Bomb. They come back in with the Araquanid. I'm going to go straight for the Power Whip here. Power Whip does decent damage. We're going to stay in, and actually, if they don't have Bug Buzz here, then I can actually tank whatever they throw. They go for Water Pulse. We barely hang on there. They come in with their final Pokemon, a Shadow Malamar, and this is still quite a tricky situation. Now I'm going to fire for Rockside. Rockside is going to be shielded by the opponent, and I actually don't know who wins CMP in this matchup, so either way, gonna shield. And it turns out it is the Geodude that wins CMP. That's huge for me. Rockside gets the KO there. They come back in with the Araquanid, but unfortunately, we are going to see the Bubble Beam coming through. We barely hang on there, but we are not going to reach a Charge Move, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. Apologies for the slight pause there. Someone is ringing on the doorbell, but I'm mid-recording, so can't really stop now. Anyways, into next battle. We're going to see Shadow Feraligatr. We are going to swap this time into Lycanroc straight away, just in case they do have an answer that maybe our Dhelmise is needed for in the backline. But either way, we're going to see a Shadow Shelgon coming in. That is insanely spicy, and unfortunately for me, they barely hang on with 1 HP and a Dream. They reach a Crunch, and not affording to double shield there. We're going to come in with the Dhelmise, get the full farm down. They come back in with Shadow Feraligatr, and we probably grab a shield with a Wrap here, so I am just going to go straight for that Wrap. Wrap is going to be shielded by the opponent, and I can probably come in with a Geodude and fully farm them down now. They go for Hydro Cannon Bait. Again, we barely hang on there. It doesn't really help me that much. But what does help is when they've got Charizard in the back. There's nothing they can do here. So we go for Rockside. The opponent has clearly just Rage Quit out of the app. So unfortunately, it is going to take a while for me to just Volt Switch, farm down the Shadow Feraligatr. But eventually, we get the farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see Dhelmise into yet another Shadow Feraligatr. So, unfortunately, when I am seeing water types in the lead, it is Shadow Feraligatr. I feel like this Pokemon has certainly regained popularity recently, both in its Shadow and non-Shadow variant, which is not ideal for the Dhelmise there. I feel like maybe if I used this team like a week ago, it could have been a lot better for me because other water types don't have as much play into Dhelmise as the Feraligatr. But anyways, we swap into Lycanroc. Unfortunately, met with Credilli. Not really able to do much there as they can reach a Charge Move before I get to back-to-back, but we come back in with the Dhelmise. I don't really want to shield here, so I am going to let this go through. This is actually going to put me into range where they can probably farm me down. They try to snipe, actually, with that Shadow Feraligatr, but we can go for a Power Whip. Power Whip is going to be shielded, and now we come in with the Geodude. Now, I did think about going for Wrap, but actually, because I go for Power Whip, we get more farm. We still get the full Volt Switch farm down, and their final Pokemon is going to be Galarian Moltres. So at this point, I'm firing off the Rock Side. I've got back-to-back charge moves. Got to watch out for a catch, so I hold onto the energy. But unfortunately, because I wait there, I can't quite go and farm up to back-to-back charge moves again. Here, I don't know who wins CMP, so I swap out. I make the catch at the last second. I looked it up afterwards. Apparently, Geodude also wins CMP in this matchup, so I didn't need that catch, but Rock Tomb gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle, and this is actually the first battle I did with this team. I lead into Shadow Hypno, great lead matchup for me. They say swap into Feraligatr, and I'll be honest, I have no idea why I swapped into Lycanroc. Usually, I just swap into the top Pokemon on, like, the ordering there, so swapped into Lycanroc. It's just still fine. I can win this in the 2-shield scenario for sure, as I can now just double shield and fully farm them down. But of course, Geodude is going to have a slightly better matchup here, and also Lycanroc is going to be better into the Hypno. But let's see what the opponent wants to do here. The opponent is going to come back in with that Shadow Hypno. I can go straight for a Drill Run. Drill Run is going to deal huge damage there. Unfortunately, not quite able to get a full farm down. And they probably do have access to Ice Punch for coverage. So I've got to watch out for that. They're going to come in with a Shadow Dusknoir. And because they do take a 1-turn swap, of course, I'm going to outpace them to the charge move. We fire off the Rock Side. The opponent is now going to fire off a charge move. The opponent full sends a Dynamic Punch there. And unfortunately, I can't go for a full Shadow Claw farm down. Forced to throw the Power Whip. Power Whip gets the KO there. But if they've got Ice Punch or even like a Side Shock or something, this will get the KO. And unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's opponent there into the next battle. Going to see another Altaria in the lead. Going to be safe swapping into Lycanroc. And unfortunately, this time met with a Shadow Sizzle. That is not ideal. We can still reach a draw run. This should grab a shield advantage. But honestly, like, I don't know what to do here. Like, come back in with the Delmise, of course, because it's not going to do very well into Altaria. But I kind of need my Geodude to sweep. But even then, I still need to shield here. And actually, I need to double shield to get rid of the Shadow Sizzle. Maybe I should have just let this move go through, come in and Volt Switch farm them down, but we get the farm down. We swap into Geodude. They have a Gastrodon in the back, so unfortunately this time that Lycanroc safe swap did not bait out the Mud Boy, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's up in there into the next battle. We're going to see a Shadow Victory Bell in the lead. They swap, they catch a Wrap onto Altaria, which is great for them because unfortunately, that doesn't really help me that much. Of course, I debuff their defense, but I could still get the KO with a Charge Move from my Geodude anyways, so that does just waste my energy there. But we can now just farm up to back-to-back Charge Moves. I'm going to go for a Rock Side. Rock Side gets the KO there. Potentially here, since they come back in with the Victory Bell, I should have just over-farmed, allowing them to get less Razor Leaf farm down. But either way, we're still in a decent position here. I'm going to come back in with the Delmise, probably running like Acid Spray here, so I'm going to shield anyways. Even Leaf Blade does a lot of damage. They go for Leaf Blade. Their final Pokemon is a Bastiodon, and this is where Drill Run coverage is very nice. We're going straight for it here, outpacing them. Drill Run does huge damage. That is also non-stab as well. At this point, I actually don't need to shield this. I think my lose condition is if I shield there, go for a farm down, they Razor Leaf farm me down and come out with another charge. We've loaded on the Victory Bell, so instead, we come in with the Delmise. This is still going to be quite close here, but we go for the Wrap, we debuff the defense, we get the full farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there, they actually made that very close considering the teams, but into the next battle, we're going to see an Altaria in the lead, going to be safe swapping into Lycanroc once again, and eventually they do swap into Marowak. Now here we go for the Trailblaze. Trailblaze, unfortunately this is a non-shadow, so it doesn't quite put them into farm down range, and they just barely get to a Bone Club. So I'm actually going to shield here to grab a shield back from the opponent. So expecting the opponent to shield, they do shield there, so they do regain alignment, but that's okay. We can come in with the Delmise. Of course, Altaria does have a lot of loaded energy, so we've got to be careful of that. But we're going to go for a full farm down here. This is just a Bone Club. Doesn't deal much damage. I'm going to swap out straight away, and the opponent is going to fire off a charge move, but that's fine with me. Very unlikely to be a Dragon Pulse or like a Dazzling Gleam or anything like that. So I'm going to swap now into Geodude. Go for a Rock Side here. Rock Side grabs a shield. Maybe should have gone for Rock Tomb there just to debuff their attack stat. But either way, they go for a Hydro Cannon. Now I'm going to go for another Rock Slide. I'm hoping this gets the KO here. Rock Slide just barely doesn't, so I swap out. I'm hoping the opponent has reacted and gone for a Drill Peck, but no, they go for a Hydro Cannon there. They didn't react in time, which actually works out in their favor because now I'm not the one that gets the farm down. Instead, the Altaria gets the farm down, and whilst I should just barely tank a Sky Attack here, I'm not going to get to a charge move, so unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG to opponent there into the next battle, and finally a great lead matchup for the Delmise, and the opponent, I don't understand why, but they just instantly concede the match there. That was pretty much the only really good matchup I had in the lead with the Delmise, and the opponent just instantly conceded. So unfortunately, don't really have any gameplay of me just like fully hard countering the opponent's team. I guess we've had a few like the Hypno where it's pretty good. Either way, next battle we see another Gastrodon not respecting the damage from that Trailblaze, and we can reach yet another charge move. I should have gone for Draw Run here, but either way, probably going to grab a shield anyways, so the opponent is going to shield there, so it doesn't really matter what I throw. We're now going to come in with the Geodude. I'm going to shield one of the charge moves. They should be able to reach back-to-back foul plays here. I shield the first one, and the opponent is going to go for the next one straight away. Foul play number 2 coming through. They're now going to swap into a Shadow Credilli, and I'm going straight for the Rock Tomb. Of course, they are on Acid as the fast move, so I'm resisting it. I can now reach a Rock Slide here, winning CMP. Rock Slide is not going to be shielded. I can just swap back straight away into Delmise, go for a full Shadow Claw farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there, into the next battle, going to see a Clodsire in the lead now. I don't really know why, but I think I'm eventually going to swap into Lycanroc. Actually, maybe not. Maybe that's a different battle here. So, maybe going to stay in here. I've got a few battles up against the Clodsire. Oh, this is going to be the battle that the team that Yonka showcased recently with Meowscarada and Greninja. Now, here, I realized they've both got very similar attack stats. It turns out it's IV dependent, but Delmise does typically just barely lose CMP, and I don't have a single answer to Meowscarada. So at this point, I'm just going to allow them to full send a Frenzy Plant there. We come in. My only win condition is if they don't shield their Greninja, which they should be doing. It's a Greninja. They're probably going to shield anyways, even if they don't know the charge moves. And unfortunately, Trailblaze going to be shielded. There's nothing I can do there, and so I do just concede the match. But into the next battle, we're going to see a Credilli in the lead. So the opponent's going to be safe swapping into Corviknight. I'm actually staying in initially here. I'm going to sponge the damage, then swap into Geodude. The opponent does not get a boost to their attack stat. The reason I didn't swap out straight away is because Geodude takes double super effective damage from the fast moves, and now they do boost there, so now we can at least fire off the charge move. The opponent not going to shield the Rock Slide. They're going to come back in with that Credilli. They're on Bullet Seed, which is why they swapped out, but now we can go for another Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb does okay damage. It debuffs their attack stat, and the opponent is going to fire off another move here. The opponent goes for Grass Knot there. We can come back in with that Delmise. They swap into a Skeledirge, and we can come straight in with the Lycanroc. Now, unfortunately, I can't quite commit to a full farm down here before they get to the next move, so I'm actually going to go for a Trailblaze, fully undercharge this, just to get more farm on the Lycanroc, and now we come out already boosted. They come back in with Credilli. We can actually force a CMP tie here, and of course, Trailblaze going to grab the shield from the opponent. Delmise has a lot of energy. They have a 0 fast move pressure into the Delmise, and I can just start going for these wraps. First wrap, gonna grab the final shield, and now I can go for a Power Whip. Wrap probably gets the KO from this range, but no reason to take the risk there. Power Whip gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there, into the next battle, we're going to see Delmise into Guzzlord. So, of course, not a great matchup, and actually my entire team loses to Guzzlord, so that is definitely not ideal, but we're going to say swap into Lycanroc as we always do, and the opponent comes in with a Jellicent. This is fine with me. This is actually really good to see with that Lycanroc. We go for Trailblaze, we grab a shield there. I don't really want a double shield, so I am going to let this move go through, but I'm going to have to shield one of my Pokemon anyway, so maybe I should have just double shielded, committed to a massive Sucker Punch farm down, but either way, we're coming in with the Geodude, and now I realize I can shield once and go for a huge Volt Switch farm down instead, and the energy on my Geodude is probably better into the Guzzlord than with the Lycanroc, although of course I am not boosted here. So here we're going to go for a Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb, of course, going to debuff their attack stat. It does decent damage. Now I'm going to look to throw a Rock Slide before they do reach a Brutal Swing. We grab a shield there from the opponent. At this point, we've got no shields remaining, but they are debuffed. Brutal Swing doesn't do too much damage there. I don't want to get too low, so I will fire off the Rock Slide here. Rock Slide gets the KO, but their final Pokemon is a Shadow Drapion. There's just nothing Dhelmise can do here. So unfortunately, Crunch gets the one-shot, and the opponent is going to be able to reach an Arcutel. They could have just fully farmed me down there. Doesn't really make a difference. Arcutel gets the KO, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG to opponent there into the final battle of this video, leading into a Florigist, so this should be a good matchup, assuming they're on Chilling Water and Trailblaze as charge moves, as both are going to be resisted. Chilling Water is going to debuff my attack stat, however, and unfortunately Power Whip is no longer going to put them into fast move farm down range before they get to another charge move. So unfortunately for me, even though we do win this matchup, it's not super comfortable. I'm actually going to swap into Lycanroc, get the snipe, but the opponent swaps out straight away into a Blastoise, which is perfectly fine with me. Trailblaze does big damage there. Of course, I do need to use a shield, but now I can just commit to a full Sucker Punch farm down, and let's see what they want to do. They're going to come in with a Fire Spin Charizard, which is kind of interesting. I do just throw the Draw on straight away. They no shield, that's resisted damage, but it doesn't really matter. We've got Geodude in the back. We Volt Switch, farm down the remainder of their team, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.